How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be looking at a belt knife sold by Track of the Wolf. Now, Track of the Wolf is a company I highly recommend. If you're into black powder or any sort of early American reenactment or shooting sports, then definitely check them out. They're a great resource for any products involving that. But today we're going to be looking at a product I was not all that impressed with. I wouldn't say I'm unhappy with it. I'm just a little disappointed. Now what this is their Lewis & Clark belt knife. It is kind of mistaken by some people that this was a knife used by Lewis & Clark, which is not exactly true. What this actually is a trade knife. Now, trade knives were manufactured by France, England, Spain, basically any country that was trading furs in the U.S. Native Americans did not have any metallurgy technology. They could not make their own knives or make their own axes or guns, so anything that they needed that was made of metal had to be made by someone else and traded to them. And one of the most popular traded items were trade knives. Now, this is a special case. It doesn't look like any trade knife that was ever sold. That's because it's been modified, and it was modified by the person it was traded to. We know that this knife was more than likely traded to an Indian chief, and at some point he broke the tip off. Just by looking at this, you can kind of tell what happened. All the other trade knives from that era would have swept up to a point about right here, so you can kind of see that it was broken, and instead of just throwing it out, it was reshaped with a point, and it made a kind of neat little shape to it. But you can see where it was broken there. And trade knives did not normally have a false edge to them. That would have had to have been added by someone else. Normally trade knives were made as cheaply as possible from stamped steel because they were a utility knife. You can see that it does not have any sort of guard here, and that means that it's not a fighting knife, because if you were to try to stab someone with this, your hand would simply slip up onto it. You'd cause just about as much damage to yourself as anyone else. Any sort of fighting knife you ever come across will have a guard, which is not to block another knife, because that's ridiculous. It's to keep your hand from moving forward. So these were not fighting knives. Fighting knives were also traded, but that's not the purpose of these. Now onto this knife itself, and why I was not quite happy with it. So let's first look at a picture of what they're offering on their website and compare it to this. Okay, as you can see, it has really nice sort of etching on it. It almost looks like a sort of faux Damascus. That's really what drew me to this knife and the other trade knives they sell. I also really like that it had a false edge, even though it's not necessary at all. This is basically a utility knife. It was originally used for hunting and skinning and use in the fur trade, and basically I would be using it as a hunting knife. So it's not really necessary. It just adds something a little extra to the blade. But as you can see, this knife has no etching. Now, I've polished the knife to get rid of the kind of dark sooty coating that was on it, but it had none of that etching. The only really etching it had, let me focus my camera here, was right here, one spot of it that was right here that you can kind of sort of still see, but that was it. Other than that, it was a plain blade, and it was extremely uninteresting. I was very unhappy with it when I first got it. And more shockingly was this false edge. But when you flipped it over, there was no false edge on this side. It looked like a butter knife. When I flipped it over and saw that, I was extremely disappointed. It really ruined the look of the knife to only have it on one side. Now, you can see that I've taken a file to it and added my own false edge, but it's not the same. I would have preferred to have that on both sides. But the price point on this knife is $43, and you get what you pay for. The one thing I was kind of angry about, I wouldn't say angry, but just disappointed, was the handle. I really like the wood of the handle. It looks nice, but there's two problems with it. First off, it appears that they drilled this hole after the fact, because you can see that it's splintered out. If you're going to make a knife like this and you want a hole in it, drill the hole first before you finish the wood, so that you can clean up that area and not have that splintering out. The next thing is, if you look in the picture, which I just put up, it has the rods, the brass rods, spaced out on either side. So they're more towards the edges and they're a little more spaced out and there's more of them. That's not the case on this knife. They're all in a basically straight line. And that's not optimal. If you have very small rivets, you want them spaced out like this to get a more secure, binding to that grip. With it like this would be fine if these were larger, much larger than this. But I'm afraid that this handle is going to come loose at some point, or possibly crack. And if it cracks, it'll crack right along that line. So I'm not exactly happy with that. I wish they would have done that the way that they advertised. I also wish the etching was as they advertised. And I wish they had put a false edge on both sides. I was very disappointed with that. As you can see, I went ahead and just polished it with Mother's polishing compound. It's a little bit messed up right now because I have been using this knife for hunting. And as you can see, I've had to sharpen it. But it holds up very well. Just to give you some numbers on this, it's 9 inches total, 5 3/8 blade length, 1095 steel, and it's a little on the thin side. It's about 0.063, which is kind of thin. You can see that there's a little bit of bend in the blade, but that's actually pretty historical. These were not meant as hunting or fighting knives, they were meant as hunting knives. And my Opinel number 7, which is one of my favorite knives that I carry every single day, is at, let's see, 0.06, so very close, actually a little thinner. And I don't mind this at all. I use this for my EDC knife every day, so not disappointed in that. So the thickness doesn't really bother me. It's basically the aesthetics of this knife are not what I thought I was going to be getting, and of course the rivets were not right. The finish was bad. Basically what I'm trying to say is be careful when you buy these. I do like the little canoe though, that's nice. Be careful when you buy these. It's not what you see on the website, but I guess you get what you pay for. As I said, they're only $43. Ignore the sheath. That's something I threw together in like an hour. Did not come with a sheath, but that's what you get. Would I recommend that somebody buy this knife? I can't really say I'd recommend it. There are other knives on the market, other trade knives that you could pick up. They're going to be a little more expensive, but if you're dead set on having the Lewis & Clark knife, I'd say just know what you're getting into. It's not going to be as advertised on Track of the Wolf. If you still want it, go for it. It is a good knife. It is a good hunting knife. It's actually the perfect size. I really like the size of it. But the aesthetics are not what I thought they'd be. So, just want to give you a kind of realistic view of what you'll be buying if you go after these. I haven't seen another review on these trade knives. I would imagine that all the other trade knives that are made by the same company are going to be the same deal. You're probably not going to get as nice etching. They're probably not going to be put together as well as they look in the pictures. So buyer beware. I kind of got hosed on it, but I'll make the best of it. So thanks for watching.